you clearly, and I obviously I know this from researching you, but you are clear as day a big fan of my personal idol, Mr. Muhammad Ali.
Absolutely.
It takes real strength to speak out in the midst of sure opposition. So for you to speak out knowing that the very people you're serving and the very people you've been serving for so many years, they're not going to take kindly to those words. And many of them are not going to take the time, do the research to understand why you're saying what you're saying. They're just going to hear the footnote, the cliff note. They're just going to hear the highlight reel and run with it. I think that I gotta admire your bravery. I really do.
Well, I've never met a man. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I've never met a person more courageous than Ali. And so you and I share that. Ali is the GOAT. No doubt about that.
Yes, he is.
And he's not just the GOAT in the ring. He's the GOAT outside of the ring. Because I think about this all the time. And I'm not trying to cast aspersion on anybody, and I'm not trying to call anybody out. But can you think, I mean, it's a serious question for you, Brother Shawn, and for your viewers. Can you think of any black athlete right now at the top of his game in his 20s or her 20s who would walk away from everything at the top of their game over a matter of principle? Ali said when they tried to draft him, you can talk about me for however long, want me to fight against the Viet Cong, but ain't no Viet Cong ever called me nigga.
That's right.
And he refused. He absolutely refused to enlist and to fight in a war that was killing people he had never met, did not know, who had never done anything to him. And as you well know, he gave up his career. And for years, he was out of the ring at the top of his game. He's the GOAT because when he finally got back, when the Supreme Court ruled in his favor, and he finally got back, he went on to win the championship 3 or 4 more times. I mean, Ali is the GOAT, but he's not the GOAT for me because of what he did in the ring. He's the GOAT for me, Brother Shawn, because this Negro stood on his beliefs. He stood on his principle. I say to people all the time, you have to live your life by a certain set of immutable principles. You got to live your life by your own immutable principles. What is the mission statement for your own life? What are your principles for which you are willing to die? King put it this way: a man who has not found something for which he is willing to die ain't fit to live. You have to know what your principles are. And so Ali is my man, my hero, because of the principal position he took and refused to fight in that war. And I must tell you, as a child growing up in Indiana, I never imagined that my career, there's a great movie called Broadcast News that starred the late, great William Hurt, who died some months ago. And in that movie, there's a line, and the line is simply this: what do you do when your life exceeds your dreams? What do you do when your life exceeds your dreams? Well, I've learned over the years, when your life exceeds your dreams, you dream bigger dreams. You just dream bigger dreams. But as a child, I could never have imagined that I would ever get a chance to meet Ali, much less be his friend, and to have known Muhammad Ali and to have interviewed him and hung out with him at his house and gone to dinner with him and traveled with him. I can't begin to tell you how full I am right now. I'm so glad you raised his name, just thinking about Ali, because what he shows all of us is that at our best, our courage can come through. And I believe that courage is contagious. When you act and behave courageously, others will be inspired by that. So never surrender to cowardice. Always stand courageously.
I'm so mad at you because I was actually going to close this interview with that quote: sometimes your life exceeds your dreams.
Yeah, man.
Because I've heard you say that on several occasions.
It does, man.
But that is such a dope quote. It really, really is. Interesting sidebar. I had an opportunity, and I'm sure I was not as friendly with the GOAT, the greatest to ever do it, Mr. Muhammad Ali, but I had the opportunity to visit him in his home.
Oh, yeah.
In Arizona. And I sat with him and literally watched The Thriller of Manila. One of the greatest highlights of my life. And then I'll go one better for you.
You got me beat on that now. I've hung out with Ali. We were friends. I loved him. Interviewed him a bunch of times. But I ain't never sat with Ali and watched The Thriller of Manila, man. You got me on that, brother Shawn. You got me on that one, man. I ain't mad at you, brother.
And I'll go one better for you. You remember his photographer, Howard Bingham?
My dear friend, I loved Howard Bingham.
Yep. Rest in peace. God bless his soul. Howard took the pictures of us that day.
Wow.
So it wasn't so much that I got a chance to be with my idol. Howard Bingham, who has taken all of those incredible photos that we know of Muhammad Ali, going back to, Muhammad Ali in training camp in Miami in the 60s. The pictures I have is taken from his camera. So God bless him.
No, if you have any photo of you and Ali taken by Howard Bingham as you do and I do, that is an honor in and of itself to be photographed by Howard Bingham with the champ. And I've had many days in my life where Howard and the champ and I sat and had lunch and dinner and breakfast and just hung out. And again, just the joy. I believe in being in the moment, right? Somebody once said that life is not so much about the breath that we take, but about those moments that take our breath away.
There you go.
Every time I was in Prince's presence, it was never lost to me. Negro, this is Prince. Whenever I'm with Ali, it was never lost to me. This is Ali. And so I try to steep myself in those moments, not be thinking about the next day or the day before. I wanted to be present in those moments with these greats that are now gone. And in my career, I've had a chance to do that with many, but I always try to make sure that I still myself, that I focus myself. And when I walk in their presence, I own that moment, because you never know if it's ever going to repeat again. You never know when they're going to go or when you're going to go. So I try to live and be present in those moments.
I'm so happy you said that. And I hope and pray that somebody who's listening to this, who is aspiring to do great things, who is aspiring to really go and change their family trajectory. It's so hard, Tavis, to live in the moment. Like when you are trying to achieve great things, you might be here this second, but you are thinking about 3-4 different goals that you have, which you got to do 4 hours from now. So the fact that when you were in the presence of these great people, you had the presence of mind to say, let me just live in this moment. That is much easier said than done. And for anybody who's listening to this, I really think that that's something that you should practice, not just when you're around the presence of great people, but when you're around the presence of people you love, your mother, different people, because you don't know if they're going to be here tomorrow.
That's right.
You just don't know. Speaking of people who passed away, Michael Jackson, 2009, he passes. I know you had this long-standing relationship with Prince. How did Prince handle the passing of Michael Jackson?
It was challenging. When the news came that Michael had passed, Prince was in rehearsal in Chanhassen, outside of Minneapolis at Paisley Park. He was in rehearsal with his band. They were about to play Montreux, the Montreux Jazz Festival. And he and his band were in rehearsal. And when the news came, he closed the rehearsal, ended it abruptly, went to his room, his living space, his quarters at Paisley Park, and just locked himself down. And for days he wouldn't talk to anybody. He didn't want to see anybody. That thing hit him, and it hit him hard. He locked himself in his room for a few days and just, again, didn't communicate with anybody. He eventually came back out. The band finished rehearsals, and they jumped on the plane to go to Montreux. I was honored that when he played Montreux that year, he called me and he asked me if I would go to Montreux with him. I said, absolutely. And so I hopped on a plane and flew to Montreux and took with me my dear friend Cornell West. And we went to Montreux to hang out with Prince for a few days. And on the night of his big Montreux performance, he killed it as he always does. We went to a little club in Montreux afterwards and did a little after set at this club. And then we went back to his hotel room. He was staying at the presidential suite at the nicest hotel in Montreux. And the presidential suite it's on the top floor of the hotel. And so the entire top of the hotel outside is space that has been appointed in connection with that room. So there are chairs, there are a lounge area, there's an outdoor fire pit. So he had literally the entire top floor of this hotel inside and out. And we get back to the hotel about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning from this club. He orders breakfast. We sit there and we eat. And for hours until the sun came up, I'll never forget it as long as I live, Brother Shawn. For hours, we sat there until the sun came up. And all Prince talked about that night was the death of Michael Jackson. And it really wasn't until that night that I realized the ways in which he regarded Michael. Because back in the day, everybody was like, who you with? You got Michael, you with Prince. You with Michael, you with Prince. That's not how Prince saw it. And on that particular night, just sitting, and I value the privacy of our intimate moments. And I would never say things that Prince said to me that should not be said publicly. But that's the one conversation that I wish I had been able to record. Because I can't recall.
Really?
Because I can't recall. I remember going, because we talked, he talked for hours. And I remember when it was all said and done, I went back to my hotel room and I scribbled notes as fastly as I could, as much as I could recall from what Prince had to say that night about Michael. But we sat for hours and Prince just downloaded on what it meant to him that he had shared this earthly stage with Michael. And it was just a beautiful night. And I did very little talking. Dr. West did very little talking. It was mostly Prince just talking and offering his reflections and remembrances and just opening up his heart about this brilliant artist named Michael Joseph Jackson. But again, if I could ever have recorded just one conversation, I've got many recorded, but that's the one that I wish I had on tape, just to listen to him talk about Michael Jackson and the respect he had for Michael and Michael's craft. It was a beautiful moment, brother.
Let me ask you, did he admire Michael from afar? Meaning, obviously, he's a musician. He's an artist in the truest sense of the word. Did they have this personal relationship where they were on the phone 2, 3, 4 times a week? Or was it just real admiration for a fellow artist that I know what it takes to rise to the top of your craft.
Yeah.
And here I am sitting on one side of the auditorium and I'm at the top of my craft. I'm Prince.
Yeah.
But there's this other guy. I might not speak to him often. I might not hang with him. I don't know, what's his favorite food, but I just have a deep admiration because I know what it takes to get to where he's at. Did they ever have a personal relationship, or from what you're talking, it just was truly admiration as a human being and as an artist?
Yeah, they were never connected personally in that way. But as you well know, game recognizes game.
There you go.
Game knows game, man. And to your point, Michael respected Prince and Prince respected Michael. This is also a true story. Michael Jackson was once asked why he, didn't like to sleep. And we all know, sadly, he sort of died because he was put to sleep and never awakened. But Michael had to have help, literally, to go to sleep. He never wanted to sleep. And once he was asked why he didn't like to sleep. And he said, I'm afraid that if I sleep too long, God's going to give all the good ideas to Prince. If I sleep too long, Prince is going to get all the good ideas from God. And so I can't go to sleep. And Prince was sort of the same way. I mean, as you know, he had 10,000 plus songs in his vault that have never been released. And we'll be hearing Prince songs for time eternal because there's so much stuff in that vault. But they had a healthy respect for each other. I think it's fair to say. Again, game knows game. When I sat with Prince that night, all night on the top of that hotel in Montreux and listened to him talk about Michael, it was just clear that he respected him for his craft. I think the one thing about Michael that you can't fade, and Prince couldn't fade this either, Michael is perhaps the greatest showman that ever lived.
Absolutely.
I mean, you can't fade his showmanship. So even if you're a Prince fan like I am, I'm a fan of both of them. But you cannot fade Michael Jackson's showmanship. And can I just tell you, and I don't recall when this came out, And obviously Prince was still living, but I don't think that Prince and I ever discussed it. And now in retrospect, I wish we had. But that This Is It documentary about Michael,
Yep.
as he's preparing for his last, what was supposed to be his, This Is It, the This Is It tour. For those who've seen that documentary gives you a glimpse into the way Michael worked. It gives you a glimpse into that Negro's genius.
Yes.
And I don't, I got a library full of stuff. But when that documentary came out, I called my friends who were behind that and asked them to get me a copy of it, because I had to make sure that I had a copy of that This Is It documentary in my library. And of all the documentaries that I have, and I love documentaries, I watch them all the time, but I have watched no documentary more than I've watched the This Is It documentary, because of the glimpse it gives you into Michael's genius and the way that Negro worked, man, in rehearsal. And so I just love it. And Prince and I, again, never had a chance to talk about that specifically, but you see Michael's genius and the work that he was unafraid to put in that documentary. And again, with Prince, I saw that up close. I didn't have to see a documentary. I'm at rehearsals. I'm watching the way he does things. I'll tell you got time for a quick story about Prince?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
So Prince was on my TV show any number of times, as you know. Any number of times. I'm going to do this as fast as I can. On my show any number of times as a guest. I'm the one person he always loved to talk to on television. He would pop up on the Tonight Show or someplace and perform, but he would sit and talk to me and perform on my show. We were friends. He was never, shy about opening up to me privately or in public. So he came on my show all the time. One night, Prince comes on my PBS show. And on this particular night, the way the show is going to open is I'm going to stand on my mark in front of the camera. Prince is seated behind me on a stool. Now, because he was so small and I'm a big guy, Prince is seated on this stool behind me with his acoustic guitar turned straight up so you can't see it. The guitar is hiding behind my back. Prince is hiding on this stool behind my back. And I say, good evening from Los Angeles. I'm Tavis Smiley. Tonight on PBS, Prince. That's all I say. I walk off into the darkness. The light comes up and you see Prince seated on this stool and he's playing his acoustic guitar. Now you can Google that show. It's all over the internet. But I'm telling you, I ain't making this up. You can Google it. So I say, good evening from Los Angeles. Tonight, Prince on PBS. I walk off. Prince is on the stool. The light comes up. He starts playing the acoustic guitar. And that's how the show opens. After Prince plays this little riff for about a minute and a half, Brother Shawn, he strums his last note, and then my theme music opens up. Tonight from Los Angeles, it's Tavis Smiley. His guest is Prince. But that's how the show opens. Now, I have to explain that for you to appreciate the point I'm about to make to you. So Prince knows he is going to perform on my show. He knows this is how the show is going to open. He and I have discussed this. He calls me one day and he says, T, it's Prince. I said, hey, Prince, can I ask you a question? Sure, brother. He said, what is the color palette on the back of your set? On your set design? What is the color palette on your set? I'm like, what a strange question. What is the color palette? I said, there's some blues, there's some purples. He said, would you mind sending me the color palette for your set? It just so happened that this particular set was designed by the great tennis player, Venus Williams. Venus and Serena both want to go into design, already are, when their careers are over. So Venus hears I'm doing a new set design and I'm putting out RFPs. Venus calls me one day and says, Tavis, will you please let me design your set? I said, Venus, you ain't done no set designs. Long story short, I let Venus do it. So for the last few years on PBS, the set that you saw me on every night was designed by Venus Williams. All right. So I called Venus and I said, send me the color palette. I get it. I sent it to Prince. All right, done. A couple of days later, Brother Shawn, I get another phone call from Prince. T, it's Prince. How you doing, brother? I'm fine. Question. Can you tell me what note is your theme song recorded in? Your theme music. What note is it in? I said, I think it's a F sharp, but I'm not sure. He said, would you mind having somebody send me the MP3 of your theme music? Whatever you want, Prince. I send him the theme music. So now he's got the color palette for the set and the theme music. Fast forward. We do the show. After the show, Prince says, what are you doing tonight? I said, I got to tape 4 or 5 more shows. He said, let's go to dinner tonight. Fine. I finished my tapings. I meet Prince at the restaurant, as he often did. He done bought the whole restaurant out. The whole place is empty. It's just me and him sitting there in this restaurant having dinner, right? And so over dinner, I said to Prince, I said, Prince, I got to ask you something, man. He said, what? I said, why did you ask me for the color palette to my set design? His answer was, you didn't notice the stool that I was sitting on? And I closed my eyes and I went back to think what stool he was seated on. And I didn't get it. He said to me, go look at the tape. And fast forward, when I saw the tape, I got it. He wanted to know the background colors on my set because he wanted his staff to paint the stool he was sitting on the same colors of my set, so it would blend in. So when you see him sitting there, it looks like he's floating, like he's levitating, because he's painted the stool the color of the background on my set. Only that Negro could come up with that. He wanted it to blend in so it would look seamless to the eye. There wouldn't be a stark contrast, and it would look like he was levitating as he's playing the acoustic guitar. I said, okay, I get it now. Why did you need the theme music? He said, Tavis, I wanted to make sure that I played the song that I sang that night in the same key as your theme song. Because once I strummed my last note, I didn't want the listener to have a cognitive dissonance between shifting from one note to another note. It's not good for the ear. I said, Negro,
Wow.
you're killing me. You're killing me. You're killing me.
Wow.
But only somebody of that level of genius would spend the time focusing on that kind of detail to make sure the stool was painted the right color, that he played the song in the right key so that your ear wouldn't hear the dissonance when my theme music started. So he strums his last note, boom, and my theme music in the same key starts. That is a genius. That's a guy that pays attention to detail, and that's what Michael and Prince respected about each other. Attention to detail. That's what makes geniuses.
Oh man, you see, you taking words right, because you went into your Prince story right after Michael, and you focus so much on the work ethic with Mike.
Yes.
Work ethic is only one part of it. People can get to the top.
Yep.
But staying on top is the hard part.
That's right. That's right. You're preaching, man.
In order to stay, the ones who really do amazing and incredible, they focus on the detail. There's no detail that is too small. So when you were telling that story about Prince, I knew exactly where you were going, because it's always in the detail. Most people think, no problem. Nobody's going to notice this.
That's right.
You notice. It's always in the detail.